Good evening, dear Mr. Sajjanhar. I'm very glad to see you. And
Good evening, Mr. Sultanov. I'm also delighted to be with you.
thank you so much. And thank you so much that you have accepted our interview proposal. So today, Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar, a prominent, well-known Indian political scientist, is the guest of ours. Mr. Sajjanhar, I would like directly to switch onto our questions. So it's also common knowledge that lots of things, lots of facts, and lots of political processes have occurred and are still ongoing today, and that's why we do really need the point of view, the opinion of as respected and well-known and prominent expert as you are. And thank you so much again. Mr. Sajjanhar, the very first question of mine will be associated with India and Pakistan relationship. It's also common knowledge that these countries are sharing a very serious and tense neighborhood, tense region, and lots of tensions are occurring between these two countries. The very first question of mine is, how do you, from your specialist's point of view, assess the current state of bilateral relations between India and Pakistan? Are there any real prospects for reconciliation between these two countries, considering their historical and political contradictions?
Yeah, thank you very much once again, Mr. Sultanov, for inviting me to this interview interaction with you. I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to connecting with you and with your audiences in Azerbaijan and around through the interview, and of course, through our interactions. I think the question that you pose is a very important one, that is relations between India and Pakistan as they stand today. The relations are not normal. The relations are stressed. The relations are tense. And if I could put it in one word, the reason for that is because Pakistan uses terrorism as an instrument of its foreign policy. And it has been responsible for carrying out very many terrorist attacks against India. Now, a little more than 10 years ago, when we had, of course, before that also, but I don't want to go too much into the past, but, about 10 years ago, when Prime Minister Modi won the elections and he was elected as the Prime Minister for the first term in 2014. Possibly your viewers might know that Mr. Modi won the third election in succession last year in 2024. So it is his third term. He won the election in 2014. After that, in 2019, he was elected with an even greater mandate. And incidentally, in 2014, it was the first time after 30 years that one single party got a mandate in the parliament, that it was able to form a government on its own. It did not have to get any coalition partners. And in 2019, Mr. Modi got an even bigger mandate. And in 2024, he formed the government again for the third time. So when Prime Minister Modi came right at the beginning, at his inauguration, he invited all the leaders from South Asia, including the Prime Minister of Pakistan. At that time, it was Mr. Nawaz Sharif. And they had very good discussion as to how the relations could be made better and so on and so forth. Then there were lots of telephonic conversations between the two leaders. Mr. Modi tried to take the relationship to a normal and a stable level. He would call Mr. Nawaz Sharif many times. Both the leaders met in 2015 in July. It was in Russia, in Baku, when there was no, not Baku, it was in Ufa, Bashkortostan, sorry. I mentioned Baku, that is the capital of Azerbaijan. So he met in Ufa in Bashkortostan in July of 2015. Both the leaders met, they spoke. Mr. Modi told Mr. Nawaz Sharif that terrorism is the problem and you have to sort it out. You have to take action against your terrorists. Then we can, try to normalize relations. And that was in July 2015. Mr. Nawaz Sharif came back. Nothing could be done because there was pressure on him that, we cannot talk about terrorism, etc., etc. Then Mr. Modi, he was at the end of that year in December 2015. He was in the neighborhood, he was in Kabul. So while flying back, he spoke to Mr. Nawaz Sharif. He dropped down in Islamabad, in the capital of Pakistan. That 25th December was the birthday of Mr. Nawaz Sharif. He dropped in to congratulate him on his birthday, wish him good health on his birthday. It was also the wedding of Mr. Nawaz Sharif's granddaughter. So he participated in that. I'm giving you all these examples to tell you that there have been efforts, very serious and strenuous efforts made by India to normalize relations with Pakistan. What do we get? 25th December 2015, Prime Minister Modi goes to Pakistan. On the 1st of January 2016, within 5-6 days, there is a huge terrorist attack in India from Pakistan. To show our good faith, we even invite the intelligence agency of Pakistan to come and have a look so that we can cooperate. But there is no cooperation. We get another huge terrorist attack in September 2016. There is what is called a surgical strike that India launches against terrorist positions in Pakistan. In 2019, in February, we have again a huge terrorist attack in which about 44 of our soldiers are killed. And then we have another attack by our aircrafts, which go and bomb the terrorist hideouts. So that was the last, of the efforts and attempts that were made by India and Prime Minister Modi. So our condition, a very small condition, Mr. Sultanov, is that when Pakistan ends support to terrorism, we can start thinking of normal relations. But even now, we are seeing an increase in terrorist activity on our borders. So I think till terrorism remains, unfortunately, regrettably, it will not be possible. And there has been no conversation between India and Pakistan since 2019.
So, Mr. Sajjanhar, you have really depicted a very vast picture of tensions and absence of dialogue, of conversation between two countries, between your homeland and Pakistan. So here the picture of the ties between India and Pakistan are clear for me. So now I would like to switch on to your another neighbor of yours, your northern neighbor, China. So how do you view the current rivalry between China and India, and what factors, in your opinion, could influence the future of these relations, and how should India respond to China's growing influence in the region?
Yeah, you have selected these two countries with which India has somewhat tense relations and abnormal relations. But let me tell you that all the other neighbors of India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, even Afghanistan, which is neighboring Pakistan on the other side, and other countries, we have excellent relations. These are the only two countries, I can say, in the world, that we don't have very normal relations. But of course, with China, relations have started improving, relations have started getting better. Let me also mention, since you are speaking about these two neighbors, that when Prime Minister Modi had come to power in 2014, one of the first foreign policy priorities that he had announced, that he had declared, was what is called neighborhood first, which means that we will, because India is a large country, not only in area, but it is also a large country in economy, in population, in resources. And it is today, the fifth largest economy in the world. It is the fastest growing major economy in the world. So it can help its neighbors. So the idea was that we will put our neighbors, give priority to them, support them in their economic growth and development. We will have a non-reciprocal, a generous relationship. Reciprocity, what incidentally, I think everyone knows now, Mr. Trump is talking about reciprocal tariffs, that if you have that tariff, I will also levy the same tariff. India doesn't believe in that. India believes that if the country is a smaller country, India, that it is not such a prosperous country, we will be much more generous, and we don't expect reciprocity from you. That is the policy that we follow. Now you come as far as China is concerned, and basically the problem, and again, I'll not go back to history 50 years ago, etc. I'll give you more recent examples. And that is, but the first point to note there is that India and China have a long land boundary, 3,488 kilometers. It is undemarcated. It has not been decided. So it is what is called, between the two sides, there is no international border as yet. There is what is called a line of actual control. So our soldiers are on this side, their soldiers are on the other side, and they do patrolling on the line of actual control. Now, to enhance confidence, we have been having very many agreements according to which, this patrolling by our soldiers will be conducted on these two sides. So we had the first agreement in 1993, then 1996, then 2005, 2012, 2013. Basically, the idea was that the border should be peaceful. Border should be stable. Border should be tranquil. Only then can we really, the full potential of the bilateral partnership can be realized. But in between, there have been occasions. I remember when we had the visit of the then Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang in 2013. There was skirmishes, there was intrusion by Chinese forces into Indian territory. So we, took it up with the Chinese authority at the highest level. Then when Mr. Xi Jinping came to India in September 2014, again there was incursion. But again, by discussion, we sorted it out. Then again, there was a face-off in 2017, when in a particular area, we have another country, small country, neighboring country, but a very close friend of ours, that is Bhutan. And China tried to build a road in Bhutan, which strategically, because Bhutan is very close to India, strategically it would have been very adverse for our strategic interests, for our security interests. So we told them that this is not good because it impinges adversely on our security. We had a face-off, face-to-face, confrontation, no use of force or weapons or anything, but an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation for 73 days, from 16th of June till end of August in 2017. That was in an area called Doklam. But still, we sort of, decided that Chinese troops will be removed, they will go into their own territory, Indian troops, Indian forces will come. Then we come to 2020, April. That is the time, I'll remind you and your viewers, that is the time when COVID has just come in. You know, February, March, COVID has just come in. And in April, we suddenly find, you know, one of the confidence building measures I told you about these agreements in 1993 and 1996, etc. One of the agreements is that no side will bring large numbers of troops next to the border, next to the line of actual control. What do we see in April 2020? More than 50,000, 60,000 troops with heavy machinery, heavy equipment, tanks, aircrafts, they are posted next to the border. And this is the COVID time, mind you, so that, you know, there is a lockdown in most of the country. So, you know, our people are not moving from here to there. But India very quickly is able to put in place a mirror deployment and bring also 50, 60,000 troops on that and bring our tanks and air force. Unfortunately, there is a skirmish at a place called Galwan. 20 of our troops are killed. And this is the first casualty in a confrontation with China after 45 years. For 45 years, there's been no casualty, although this, as I said, the boundary is not demarcated. So then, and China does not declare as to how many of its troops have were killed in that skirmish, although, you know, the TASS, the Russian news agency, said that it is above 60 soldiers of China that were killed, and CIA said that it was above 100, 104 Chinese soldiers that were killed in that skirmish. But China has not, China just mentioned that, you know, 4 of its soldiers were killed or whatever it is, but they have never really accepted that. That was the time when, you know, all the confidence building measures that we had been working on, that was, you know, put to one side. And basically then after that, we kept on meeting, our foreign ministers kept on meeting, our defense ministers kept on meeting, commandants of armed forces kept on meeting, and they were able to come to some sort of an agreement about disengagement of troops from the line of actual control so that they go back. And so the first meeting after 5 years took place in 2024 on the 21st of August in Kazan, that is the capital of Tatarstan in Russia, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. So after that, relations have started getting normalized. Now, on the bigger question in terms of rivalry and other things that you asked, Mr. Sultanov, let me mention my own thinking, you know, and it's only my own view, personal view. I think China wants to be, you know, although it talks about multipolarity on the global scene, it wants Asia to be unipolar. It wants to be the hegemon as far as Asia is concerned. And it sees India as a threat, as a challenge. India does not wish to challenge, but it wants to have a relation of equality. Even as far as our smaller neighbors are concerned, we want to have a relationship of equality with them. We want to treat them with respect and have collaborative and cooperative relationship. But China, you know, as I think their history also says, that they consider themselves the middle kingdom and all other countries are subservient to them. They are below them. So China and, you know, China feels that its economy is larger, it is, you know, progress. So all the other countries, including India, should, you know, be deferential to them, should find their place in the hierarchy, which is lower than China. And that is something that is not acceptable to India. India wants to have a relationship of equals with China. And that is why China takes a number of steps, this moving, salami slicing, as it is called, trying to chip away our territory, trying to put what is called the string of pearls around India. It has the Gwadar port in Pakistan. It wants to, keep Maldives under its control. It has the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. It has, the Chakfu port in Myanmar, etc. So it wants to have a string of pearls. It wants to contain India in some way or the other. And it is in that context, I think it is not only India that is feeling that this that China is becoming very aggressive, not only on our land border, but even in South China Sea. So we see that, a few years ago, we had the revival of what is called the Quad, which is formed of 4 countries, India, US, Japan, and Australia, basically because we want peace and stability and tranquility in the Indo-Pacific region. So let me stop here. If there are any questions on India-China relations, of course, I'll be very happy to, any more questions, I'll be happy to respond. Just last one word to say that we have tried to find out from China as to why did it do what it did in April of 2020. Why did it amass all these 50, 60,000 troops on the line of actual control? We have not got an answer from China so far.
Thank you so much, sir, for your answer on Chinese issue on bilateral ties and tensions between India and China. So now on this step, I would like to switch on to our next question. You have experience serving as an ambassador in Sweden and Latvia. And how do you assess the risk of escalation in the Baltic region, especially with NATO's increasing presence and the perceived threat from Russia? In your opinion, how should security policies evolve in this context?
Yeah, Mr. Sultanam, if you had asked me 1 week or 10 days ago, I would have said that the threat is much greater because, we have seen that I was in Sweden. I was India's ambassador to Sweden, and I've seen that de facto Sweden might not have been earlier a member of NATO, but de jure it was collaborating. It had very much of very cooperative relationship with all NATO countries. And Finland had not been a member of NATO. It was having a border with Russia, and Russia had threatened it, and even before that, before Soviet Union was Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Even before that, Finland never became a member of NATO because there was always that threat from the Soviet Union and also the Russian Federation that it will not be taken kindly by the neighboring country. But now, because of the attack by the aggression by Russia against Ukraine, and it was both these countries who for the last 60, 70 years since NATO was formed in 1949, they had decided not to become members of NATO. But right now, because in their view, the threat became so strong and so imminent that they, last year they became members of NATO because they wanted that security from NATO. So if you'd asked me a week, 10 days ago, I would have said, yes, that the threat is very much there because, these 3 Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they really fought for their independence from the Soviet Union. Not Central Asian countries, not other countries. To the other countries, their liberty, their independence was given on a platter. They did not really have to fight so much for their independence. Azerbaijan was a member of the Soviet Union. So, but once the Soviet Union disintegrated, then there were these 14 other countries that evolved. But basically, the fight for independence was done by these three Baltic states. These are small Baltic states. So they are they have been particularly felt the insecurity because they are so closely located with Russia, and they have been, there are large Russian populations there. And we have also seen that in the Baltic Sea, there have been some cables that have also been cut in recent times. So there has been this pushback and threat. Of course, no one knows who cut those cables, but these countries feel that, maybe Russia has had some, role in that, or has had a hand in that. But that having been said, I think now, after the meeting between the Russian and the American foreign ministers in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, the chances of peace, ceasefire leading to peace, appear more imminent. So I would imagine that, if on the Russia-Ukraine front peace is established, you also said, what is the basis? I think there will have to be some very foolproof security guarantees that will have to be provided for all countries in the region, for Ukraine, for Baltic states, for this Baltic Sea region and all. How these security guarantees are provided, it cannot be only by Europe and the United States. I think it was an opportunity for strengthening the hands of the United Nations. I think it has to be a global international force which has to be there, which has to, and not limited only, a NATO force or some other force. So it has to be a global force which enjoys credibility and which enjoys the trust of all the other countries. And then only I think we can really think of peace and security being assured in the region.
So you have already touched the possible scenario for the end of the war. So what exactly could be said about the possibilities of the end of the war here on this front, in this war between Russia and Ukraine? And under what conditions, in your opinion, could peace be achieved? And what could serve as the basis for negotiations between the parties to the conflict?
Yeah, very difficult to say at this moment, Mr. Sultanov, because I think it is all, everything is up in the air, it is churning and so on and so forth. But, there are some contours that I can speak about, that I can share with you, my own thoughts on that. Number one, some of the scenarios which are improbable. One is the continuation of the war, because I think both sides and everyone, Europe also, Ukraine also, Russia also, they're all tired. They have lost, men, material, even Russia, as far, whatever Mr. Putin might say that, he's the victor or he has the advantage. But still, there are Ukrainian forces which are occupying about 1,500 square kilometers of the land in Kursk. And Russia has not been able to dislodge them. Even with, 10,000, 11,000 troops from North Korea, they have not been able to dislodge them. And there are people who have died, the numbers, different people have different numbers, so I don't want to get into that. But there's pressure on both sides. So number one, what will not, in my view, going to happen is a further continuation of the war. Number two, it could, slightly a greater probability in this, it could lead to what is called a frozen conflict, something like North Korea, South Korea. that, there is a ceasefire and, some sort of a skirmishes and fightings, they keep on taking place and all that. But I think the most likely scenario is that there is going to be a ceasefire and then, talks towards more durable and more long-term sustainable peace that takes place. So I think that would be the ideal situation. And here I would imagine that we'll really have to see in terms of territory, because that is very important. Number one is territory, number two is security guarantees. So these are the two important issues. And territory at the moment, Russia is occupying about 20% of the Ukrainian territory, whether it is Donetsk, it is Luhansk, it is Zaporizhia, it is Kherson, these four provinces. So we'll really have to wait and see. That will be a matter of negotiation as to how much territory remains with Russia, how much of territory it gives back to Ukraine. And of course, as I said, this territory also in Kursk, which is under the control of Ukraine. So number one, territory, that negotiation will have to take place. And also in the area of security guarantees, what are the security guarantees? Who provides the security guarantees? But I think one thing is certain, that Ukraine will have to be a neutral country. It will not be able to become a member of NATO, because that was the raison d'etre for Russia to come into, or the ostensible reason, rationale for Russia to invade Ukraine. So I don't think it will accept the possibility of Ukraine becoming a member of NATO. But of course, I think Ukraine could become a member of the European Union. And in that context, I think its development, its economic progress, growth, reconstruction of the infrastructure that has really been decimated, that has been razed to the ground over the last 3 years, I think that could definitely, restoration of that could definitely take place. So I can see that this is the contour, maybe have a ceasefire and then, more negotiations about the control of territory and security and, Ukraine's place in the scheme of things as far as its relationship with Europe is concerned.
Mr. Sajjanhar, the very last question of mine will be associated with India-Azerbaijani bilateral ties. So from your perspective and from your expert's point of view, how do you assess the current level of our bilateral ties?
I assess them, Mr. Sultanov, very favorably. I think we have excellent bilateral ties. Of course, the potential is huge. We are, there is a bit of a distance between us, but actually there are so many flights that are going from India to Azerbaijan and vice versa. Every week there are more than 10 flights, which even, and these are direct flights, which even many of our, countries in the ASEAN, for instance, with Indonesia, which is a big country, we don't have direct flights between our capitals. And, we have to go through Bangkok or we have to go via Singapore. So I think we have that connectivity. But I would say, I would also draw the attention of your viewers and listeners to the fact that India and Azerbaijan have a very long-standing historical, cultural, and civilizational relations. Because Indian traders used to go over what is called the Silk Route. And, just close to Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, you have the Atishgah. There is a monument that has been built, quite some time ago. But of course, it goes back to the time of the Silk Road, which really was functional from 3rd century BCE till 15th century AD. That means for about 1800 years. So, our people have been going there. And this is also reflected in the relationship today, whether it is bilateral trade relations. We have about $1.5 billion worth of two-way trade. Of course, the potential is much greater. India is, I think, the third largest buyer of Azerbaijani oil, although we are so far from each other. In terms of tourism, India sends the fourth largest number of tourists to Azerbaijan. If you were to remove Azerbaijan's neighbors, that is Russia, Iran, and Turkey, who send more number of tourists to Azerbaijan, India sends the largest numbers. A country which is not a neighbor of Azerbaijan. India sends about more than 120,000 tourists every year. So I think the potential is huge. India is a rising economy, as I said, fifth largest economy. And now, I'm sure all countries are moving away from fossil fuels. They are moving into renewables. They are moving into new technologies. They are moving into AI, robotics, the new technologies. So I think India has an advantage, whether it is, many of our initiatives, the digital public infrastructure that we have, or, many of the India stacks, the fintech initiatives that India has taken. So I think the possibilities are huge, and we can build on that. And our, high-level cooperation, collaboration visits, that has also been taking place. But I was looking, I see that we have never had the pleasure of hosting your president into India. So I think the visits at that level could definitely strengthen our bilateral relations between the two countries. And our vice president has gone there, but I don't think our prime minister has gone. So I think that visits also could help. I myself, I must tell you, have visited Baku. I have participated in the Baku, what is it called? Baku Dialogue or Baku Forum. Yes. And some years ago, and I was very happy to be there. I think there is a great deal of goodwill in Azerbaijan for people of India, and I think, but we could expand on it much more.
So, Mr. Sajjanhar, the very last question of mine will be associated with concern in Azerbaijan society, associated with the fact that India is supplying Armenia via selling to Armenia Indian advanced military technologies and weaponry. So does it really mean that India is one of the main suppliers of Armenia with Indian weaponry?
Thank you very much for that question. You see, I am not certain in terms of the quantum and what is the defense equipment that is being supplied by India to Armenia. Although I do know that there have, very recently some supplies have taken place. But possibly I could say that it is like whatever India is supplying, it's defense trade. For instance, if you see other defense manufacturers and suppliers, for instance, Russia, it is one of the largest suppliers of defense equipment to India, but it also supplies very sophisticated defense equipment to China. And also, more recently, it has started supplying to Pakistan. United States, it supplies to India. It also supplies to Pakistan. So I guess if Azerbaijan also had that requirement of such weaponry or such equipment, and if Azerbaijan were to express an interest that it also wants to buy that equipment from India, I'm sure India, would be willing to consider as to, of course, on what are the terms and conditions, etc. The normal, usual things that countries look at. The other, I could say on a more geopolitical aspect, we see that Armenia has always been supportive of Indian positions, whether it is on Kashmir or against terrorism, etc. Armenia has always been supportive, and there has been, meetings that have been taking place at different levels between the leadership also. But there is a good understanding between the two countries. And unfortunately, as far as Azerbaijan is concerned, although we are talking, and I said there's huge potential, and we can of course work together. But I think if there was Azerbaijan were also to show greater understanding and greater sensitivity to India's concerns. We have just spoken about India's relations with Pakistan and how Pakistan has unfortunately emerged as the epicenter of terrorism. You look at the list in the United Nations under the 1267 committee, you will find that more than half of the terrorists come from Pakistan. More than half the terrorist organizations that are listed, that are designated there, they come from Pakistan. So if Azerbaijan were also to show some sensitivity to India's concerns and to the threat that India faces from Pakistani terrorism, I think that will that will be a further catalyst to bring our countries together and to strengthen our relations in normal areas of activity, exchanges, trade, healthcare, education, etc., tourism, and also maybe in the area of security and defense also. But we find that Azerbaijan has all the time been siding with Pakistan. So I think that sends out also, in that sense, not a very positive message to our policymakers and our decision makers in India.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sajjanhar, for your time, for your knowledge, and for your deep insights that you have shared with us. That really was a great talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sultanov. I have enjoyed our conversation. I really did not know how time has flown. We have been talking now for such a long time. Time has flown. I have enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to staying in touch with you and to the opportunity of having such conversations in future.
Of course, we'll stay in touch. And for our audience, for our viewers, I would like again to remind that Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar, a well-known Indian diplomat, a prominent writer, author, and political scientist, was the guest of ours today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sultanov.